I can find plenty of negative things to say about LeBron James. Without hesitation. I won't, but I could. Let me stick to basketball and tell you this. He's on a Mount Rushmore. He's one of the greatest players to have ever lived. I have him number 2 all time. But I appreciated and respected your take, Will Bond, on Get Up earlier when you talked about Kobe needing to be in that conversation, Kareem.
Don Nelson just unloaded on LeBron's so-called legacy, and what he said has the entire basketball world in chaos. The Hall of Fame coach did not hesitate for a second. He straight up called LeBron's career manufactured, media-driven, and even questioned whether he truly earned his place in the greatest of all-time debate. That is not a small claim. That is a heavyweight punch thrown in broad daylight. This was not some random hot take from a loud voice chasing clicks. This was a respected legend stepping up to the mic with decades of credibility behind him. We are talking about a coach with over 1,300 wins, a man who helped shape eras of basketball and watched the league evolve from bruising paint battles to today's superstar branding machine. Nelson has seen dynasties rise and fall, he has coached against icons, and now he is saying something that LeBron supporters absolutely do not want to hear. But here is where it gets wild. Nelson might actually believe every word of it, and that is what makes this explosive. He did not sound emotional, he did not sound bitter, he sounded calm, calculated, and completely sure of himself. So what exactly did he mean by manufactured? Was he talking about team moves, media hype, the way narratives are built around certain players? Because if that is the case, this conversation is about to get uncomfortable real fast. It all started as a relaxed sit-down, just a simple reflection on how basketball has changed over the years. Nelson was reminiscing about old-school matchups, the grind of past decades, the raw competitiveness that defined earlier eras. But the second the topic shifted to the modern GOAT debate, the temperature in the room changed instantly. There was no hesitation, no dancing around it. Nelson leaned in and said it plainly. LeBron's legacy is manufactured. He made it clear he was not denying the talent. I'm not saying he isn't talented, he explained. He absolutely is. But then he doubled down. He questioned how LeBron's career was structured, how narratives were shaped around him, how media coverage consistently elevated every move. According to Nelson, it did not feel organic. It did not feel like the path of the true greats he witnessed firsthand. And just like that, the entire basketball community hit pause. Social media exploded within minutes. Fans split into camps. Some called Nelson brave for saying what others are afraid to say. Others accused him of disrespecting a generational icon. Analysts rushed to give instant reactions. Debate shows started lining up segments. This was not a quiet comment that faded away. This was gasoline poured on one of the biggest debates in sports history. And before anyone tries to dismiss this as jealousy or clout chasing, let's be honest about who is speaking. This is not a random critic. This is not someone trying to revive relevance. This is Don Nelson, a Hall of Fame coach with 1,335 career wins, decades in the league, and nothing left to prove. When someone with that resume questions the foundation of LeBron's legacy, people listen. And whether you agree or not, this conversation is only getting started.
483 more games, okay? He has played 7 more years than Michael Jordan. We want to talk about 30 points, all right? Like the 30-point record. How about this 30-point record, Swagoo? Did you know that Michael Jordan averaged 30 in his career?
Yep, I did.
Did you know that Michael Jordan went 7 straight years averaging over 30? Did you know that? I mean, it's just unbelievable to me. Listen, and then I bring this stuff up, and I'm hating.
A man who has been around the NBA since the 1960s, who coached against Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and Michael Jordan in their absolute primes, is not just another opinion in the crowd. When someone with that resume speaks on basketball greatness, you do not scroll past it. You sit up and listen. That is decades of locker rooms, playoff wars, and front row seats to history talking. What makes this even louder is the timing. It is early 2025. LeBron James is still active, still stacking numbers, still building his story with polished interviews and carefully delivered messages. For more than 20 years, he has shaped his public image with precision. He has controlled narratives, stayed calculated, and presented himself as the ultimate professional. Then Nelson steps in and cracks that image with one word: manufactured. That is not a light jab. That is a direct challenge to the foundation of the story. The real question is not whether Nelson said it. He did. The real question is this: can anyone completely shut it down with hard facts? Can anyone prove him entirely wrong without leaning on emotion? That is where this gets interesting, because this debate is not about talent. It is about context. It is about how greatness is built and who gets to define it. So what does he mean by manufactured? That single word has fans arguing non-stop. Nelson broke it down into 3 core points, and each one hit harder than the last. First up, the super team era. He did not sugarcoat it. In his view, LeBron did not just join strong teams. He influenced entire roster constructions. He aligned himself with other stars to maximize his championship window. From Nelson's perspective, that shifts the conversation from pure competition to strategic positioning. He pointed to the timeline. When LeBron struggled to get over the hump in Cleveland, he left for Miami to join Dwyane Wade and Chris Bosh, 2 established all-stars. That move flipped the league overnight. It changed how franchises approached free agency. It sparked a new era of player-driven alliances. Then, after Miami's run ended, he returned to Cleveland, but this time the roster already included Kyrie Irving and assets that turned into Kevin Love. Later, in Los Angeles, the Lakers reshaped their future to pair him with Anthony Davis. Every chapter looked calculated. Every stop looked tailored. That is Nelson's angle. His argument is simple but bold. He believes LeBron has rarely been forced to grind year after year with limited pieces the way Jordan once did before his co-star fully developed. He believes LeBron has often had the leverage to influence not only where he plays, but who stands beside him. And in Nelson's mind, that matters. Now here is where it gets uncomfortable for LeBron supporters. Nelson is not inventing these moves. They happened. They are documented. The real debate is about interpretation. Do these decisions prove LeBron is smart and forward-thinking, or do they slightly chip away at the old-school image of battling through whatever roster you are handed? And just when people thought Nelson had made his point, he pushed further. His second argument cut even deeper: media narrative control. He turned the spotlight toward the coverage surrounding LeBron's career. Nelson suggested that every move, every shift, every headline has often been framed as brilliance. In his view, the media machine has amplified the myth as much as the moments. And that is where this conversation stops being simple and starts becoming explosive. Every playoff run is labeled historic. Every stat becomes the stat that changes everything. And here is where Don Nelson really pushed the conversation into dangerous territory. He argued that when Michael Jordan lost, it stuck to him. It was counted. It was remembered. But when LeBron James loses, the story often flips into praise about how incredible he was, even in defeat. That is not a light observation. That is a heavy accusation about how narratives are built. Nelson pointed to real moments that fans still debate to this day. In 2011, when LeBron lost to the Dallas Mavericks and averaged 17.8 points in the finals, struggling late in games, many expected a storm of long-term criticism. It was intense at the time, no doubt. But Nelson believes the long-term framing softened the blow. Then look back at 2007, when LeBron reached the finals young and fell short. The story became about potential, growth, future greatness. In 2014, 2015, 2017, 2018, each finals loss came wrapped in context. The roster was not strong enough. The opponent was historically stacked. He needed more help. According to Nelson, every setback came with a cushion that protected the overall image. Meanwhile, Jordan's losses were treated differently in his era. Nelson's point was blunt. When Jordan lost, it was on him. Period. There were no layers of explanation that lasted for years. The message was simple: get stronger, get better, break through, and eventually he did. That contrast is what Nelson says defines the difference in how greatness has been judged across generations. Then came the third point, and this is where the room reportedly got quiet. Nelson suggested LeBron chose the easier path. He did not call him lazy. He did not question his skill. In fact, he made it clear he respects intelligence and strategic thinking. But in his eyes, there is a difference between being smart and consistently avoiding the toughest possible road. Nelson argued that LeBron often stepped into situations where strong foundations were already in place. He joined teams positioned to compete, teams that needed a final piece rather than a total rebuild. That is a bold stance. He compared it directly to Jordan's journey with the Chicago Bulls. Jordan battled the bad boy Detroit Pistons year after year. He absorbed losses. He endured physical play. He faced repeated playoff exits. He did not leave when it got rough. He stayed, adjusted, and eventually broke through with the franchise that drafted him. Nelson views that grind as legacy building the long way, staying put, taking the hits, climbing step by step. And that is the heart of his argument. Not that LeBron lacks greatness, not that he lacks talent, but that his path to greatness has been structured, amplified, and carefully managed in ways previous legends never experienced. In Nelson's eyes, that distinction matters more than people want to admit. Now, some people might say, why does Don Nelson's opinion matter this much? Fair question. But once you actually look at his background, it hits different. This is not just an old coach talking. This is a man with 1,335 career wins, at one point the most in NBA history when he retired. 5-time Coach of the Year, Hall of Fame inductee. He did not just survive in the league, he helped reshape how it is played. The small ball style that dominates today? Nelson was experimenting with that back in the 1990s and early 2000s. Positionless basketball. He was pushing that before it was trendy, before it was praised, before it became the blueprint. He was ahead of the curve while others were stuck in tradition. That matters. More importantly, he has lived through every era. He played in the 1960s and 1970s. He coached in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. He faced the Boston Celtics led by Larry Bird. He battled the Los Angeles Lakers of Magic Johnson. He watched the Chicago Bulls dynasty built around Michael Jordan. He saw Kobe Bryant carry the Lakers in a different era. He worked with future Hall of Famers and helped turn overlooked players into stars. So when he talks about the difference between earned greatness and manufactured greatness, he is speaking from decades of patterns he has witnessed up close. He is not guessing. He is not chasing clicks. He is comparing eras he personally lived through.
Jordan fans are the best, and today we're going to be talking about if it's the beginning of the end of the LeBron James GOAT narrative. But first, before we get into it, I want to welcome back the Roosters from last week first. But before that, or after that, we got AOH here. How are you doing today, sir?
Good morning. Hey, shout out to everyone across the entire world. I've got people chat.
He even laid it out clearly. I've seen players dominate through sheer will, Nelson said. I've seen guys take average rosters to the finals. I've seen legends built through sacrifice and perseverance. And I've also seen players curate their image, manipulate their situations, and have their narratives protected by media machines. The implication was obvious. In his eyes, LeBron James fits more into that second category. What makes this critique powerful is the tone. Nelson is not yelling. He is not throwing insults. He is calm, structured, almost clinical in how he breaks it down. That makes it harder to dismiss. You can ignore a hot take artist. You can scroll past random fans online, but it is harder to ignore a Hall of Fame coach calmly dissecting a legacy piece by piece. That hits different. And here is what makes it even wilder. Nelson already knew the pushback was coming. He anticipated the defenses and addressed them head on. Defense number 1, LeBron went to 10 finals. That is more than Jordan. Nelson's response was sharp. Reaching the finals in a weaker Eastern Conference for years is not the same as finishing the job. Jordan went 6 times and won 6 times. No Game 7 losses in the finals. LeBron has been 10 times and lost 6. Nelson basically asked, are we celebrating participation or championships? Then he added context. Look at those Eastern Conference runs. The Big Three Boston Celtics were aging. The Indiana Pacers were competitive, but not dominant. The Toronto Raptors struggled under pressure for a long stretch of LeBron's prime. The East simply was not stacked like the West. That is not disrespect. That is context in Nelson's view. Defense number 2, LeBron carried weak teams to the finals. Nelson questioned that framing as well. Was it truly carrying, or was it benefiting from the conference landscape at the time? When LeBron ran into elite championship teams in the finals, he often came up short. Nelson's stance is that dominating early rounds is not the same as conquering the absolute best. He pointed to 2007. Yes, LeBron took Cleveland to the finals young, but they were swept by the San Antonio Spurs. That Spurs squad was disciplined and strong, but Nelson's tone suggested that series was more about a young star learning hard lessons than delivering some untouchable all-time run. Then came defense number 3, the argument that LeBron's all-around game is superior to Jordan's. This one clearly irritated Nelson. He believes greatness is not just about filling every column on a stat sheet. It is about dominance in the moments that define eras. It is about closing, about aura, about the pressure shifting when you step on the floor. And in Nelson's view, that is where the comparison gets real uncomfortable for LeBron supporters. Better all around. That was the phrase. And according to Don Nelson, basketball is not about stacking numbers across every column just to look complete. It is about winning at the highest level. In his view, Michael Jordan was not chasing triple-doubles for headlines. He was chasing control of the game and the final result. The mission was simple: break the opponent, secure the title. End of story. Nelson hinted at something deeper beneath the stat lines. He suggested that LeBron James's versatility and full stat sheets sometimes feed a broader image strategy. If you control the numbers, you help control the narrative. If you fill every column, critics have less to attack. But Nelson questioned whether that approach always matches the mindset of a pure closer. That is where the temperature rises. In clutch moments, he drew a sharp contrast. He implied that LeBron has at times chosen the right basketball play, instead of demanding the final shot himself. If a teammate misses, the storyline becomes about making the smart read, high IQ, trusting the system. But in Nelson's eyes, Jordan would have taken that last shot and lived with whatever came next. He framed it as the difference between a closer and a manager of outcomes. That is not a small distinction. That is a philosophical divide about what defines greatness. Then came defense number 4. The game is harder now. Nelson reportedly laughed at that argument. He lived through the 80s and 90s. He saw physical defense that would draw instant fouls in today's league. Driving into the paint back then meant absorbing real contact night after night. No freedom of movement calls, no soft landings. Stars got hit and kept going. His point was not to disrespect modern athletes. It was to push back on the idea that previous eras were somehow easier. Every era has its battles. Every era demands something different. What gives Nelson's critique weight is that he is not throwing out random opinions. He coached against legends. He watched dynasties rise and collapse. His comparisons are not based on highlight reels or social media debates. They come from lived competition. He stood on the sidelines and saw what it looked like up close. And here is the real twist. Nelson insists this conversation is bigger than LeBron versus Jordan. In his view, it is about how legacies are built in the modern era. He suggested that greatness today is shaped not just by wins and losses, but by narrative management, media cycles, social platforms, carefully timed interviews, strategic storytelling. That changes the equation. He pointed to LeBron's business ventures, his media presence, his production partnerships. Platforms can amplify certain angles and soften others. In Nelson's eyes, today's superstars compete in 2 arenas: on the court and in the narrative space. And when legacy is influenced by both performance and branding, the debate over what is truly earned gets louder. When you control the media, you control your story, Nelson said, and he gave LeBron credit for mastering that. But he drew a firm line. Being elite at public relations is not automatically the same as being the greatest player ever. That line landed sharp, not disrespectful, just direct. What Nelson is really pointing at feels uncomfortable in today's NBA. In this era, players can influence where they play, how their story is framed, and how setbacks are interpreted. Losses can become growth chapters. Transitions can become strategic masterstrokes. The narrative does not just unfold, it gets shaped. Back when Jordan played, the media questioned him openly. They challenged his leadership. They scrutinized every playoff exit. There was no safety net of narrative control. The only way to silence the noise was simple: win. And he did. Nelson's core argument is that LeBron James has rarely faced that same raw, unforgiving pressure because he has consistently stayed ahead of the narrative. According to Don Nelson, the story has often been shaped before critics even get a chance to frame it. That is a serious claim in a league where perception moves almost as fast as performance. He even pointed to the 2016 championship. Down 3-1 against the 73-win Golden State Warriors, it is widely called the greatest comeback in NBA history. Iconic, legendary, untouchable. But Nelson reminded people that Golden State dealt with injuries and suspensions during that series. His goal was not to erase the achievement, it was to ask a hard question. If that exact scenario happened for Michael Jordan, would the coverage have added an asterisk? Would analysts have softened the celebration? In Nelson's view, LeBron's moment was framed as historic from day one. That, to him, is manufactured legacy in motion. Then came the line that made people stop. We are not judging LeBron by the same standards we judged previous greats. We lowered the bar and then congratulated him for clearing it. That statement alone shakes the entire GOAT debate. Because if the criteria for greatness shifts to match one specific career path, what are we actually measuring? Championships, longevity, stats, branding power, narrative impact. If the rules change mid-game, how fair is the comparison across eras? As of early 2025, LeBron and his circle have stayed silent. No direct response, no back-and-forth interviews, no strategic posts hinting at a rebuttal, just silence. And in a media-driven world, silence can feel loud. If Nelson's claims were easy to dismantle, many expected a quick counter, stats posted, analysts breaking down context, supporters flooding timelines with rebuttals. Instead, the debate keeps expanding on its own. The longer it goes unanswered, the more curiosity builds. Some commentators try to dismiss Nelson as old school or out of touch. But that argument does not land easily when you look at his resume. Over 1,300 wins, decades in the league, multiple eras witnessed firsthand. This is not someone observing from a distance. This is someone who stood on the sidelines and lived through the battles. Here is the reality. Nelson did not invent numbers. He did not rewrite finals records. He did not deny team changes. He offered a perspective rooted in long-term experience, one that challenges the polished version of greatness many fans have accepted. Now, the basketball world feels split. Some fans applaud him for saying what they quietly believed. Others defend LeBron fiercely, arguing that adapting to a modern, player-driven era is part of greatness itself. What is rare, though, is a calm breakdown of the substance behind the claims. Long-term, what does this mean for LeBron's legacy? It is too early to say, but something has shifted. The conversation feels sharper. More people are questioning team changes. More are analyzing media influence. More are asking whether branding and basketball have become inseparable. 20 years from now, how will this era be remembered? Will LeBron be universally crowned the GOAT, or remembered as the most strategically marketed superstar of his time? Will the spotlight shine brightest on championships or on the paths taken to secure them? Nelson planted a seed of doubt. And once doubt enters a legacy debate, it does not vanish easily. So the question echoing through basketball circles is simple. Is Don Nelson right, or is this just an old-school lens clashing with a new era of player empowerment? Now it is your turn. Share your thoughts, keep it respectful, and let's actually break this down. If you enjoyed this deep dive, like the video, subscribe, and share it with other basketball fans who love real debates. More heat coming soon.